he stumbled heavily as he crossed the baked mud of his broad lot, but he cared little for that, was almost unaware of it, in fact. Thus his eyes saw as little as his body felt, and so he failed to observe something that would have given him additional light upon an old phrase that already meant quite enough for him. There are in the wide world people who have never learned its meaning, but most are either young or beautifully unobservant who remain wholly unaware of the inner poignancies the words convey. A rain of misfortunes. It is a boiling rain, seemingly whimsical in its choice of spots whereupon to fall, and, so far as mortal eye can tell, neither the just nor the unjust may hope to avoid it, or need worry themselves by expecting it. It had selected the Adams family for its scaldings, no question. The glue works foreman, standing in the doorway of the brick shed, observed his employer's eccentric approach, and doubtfully stroked a whiskered chin. "Well, there ain't no particular use gettin' so upset about it," he said, as Adams came up. "When a thing happens, why, it happens, and that's all there is to it. When a thing's so, why, it's so. All you can do about it is think if there's anything you can do, and that's what you'd better be doin' with this case." Adams halted and seemed to gape at him. "What case?" he said, with difficulty. "Was it in the morning papers, too?" "No, it ain't in no morning papers. My land, it don't need to be in no papers. Look at the size of it." "The size of what?" "Why, great God!" the foreman exclaimed. "He ain't even see it. Look! Look yonder!" Adams stared vaguely at the man's outstretched hand and pointing finger. Then he turned and saw a great sign upon the facade of the big factory building across the street. The letters were large enough to be read 2 blocks away. "After the 15th of next month, this building will be occupied by the J. A. Lamb Liquid Glue Company, Incorporated." A gray touring car had just come to rest before the principal entrance of the building, and J. A. Lamb himself descended from it. He glanced over toward the humble rival of his projected great industry, saw his old clerk, and immediately walked across the street and the lot to speak to him. "Well, Adams," he said, in his husky, cheerful voice, "how's your glue works?" Adams uttered an inarticulate sound, and lifted the hand that held his hat, as if to make a protestive gesture, but failed to carry it out, and his arm sank limp at his side. The foreman, however, seemed to feel that something ought to be said. "Our glue works hell," he remarked. "I guess we won't have no glue works over here, not very long if we got to compete with the size thing you got over there." Lamb chuckled. "I kind of had some such notion," he said. "You see, Virgil, I couldn't exactly let you walk off with it like swallering a pat of butter, now, could I? It didn't look exactly reasonable to expect me to let go like that, now did it?" Adams found a half-choked voice somewhere in his throat. Would you step into my office a minute, Mr. Lamb?" "Why, certainly I'm willing to have a little talk with you," the old gentleman said, as he followed his former employee indoors; and he added, "I feel a lot more like it than I did before I got that up over yonder, Virgil." Adams threw open the door of the rough room he called his office, having as justification for this title little more than the fact that he had a telephone there, and a deal table that served as a desk. "Just step into the office, please," he said. Lamb glanced at the desk, at the kitchen chair before it, and at the telephone, and at the partition walls built of old boards, some covered with ancient paint and some merely weather-beaten, the salvage of a house-wrecker, and he smiled broadly. "So these are your offices, are they?" he said. "You expect to do quite a business here, I guess, don't you, Virgil?" Adams turned upon him a stricken and tortured face. "Have you seen Charley Lohr since last night, Mr. Lamb?" "No, I haven't seen Charley." "Well, I told him to tell you," Adams began. "I told him I'd pay you." "Pay me what you expect to make out of glue, you mean, Virgil?" "No," Adams said, swallowing. "I mean what my boy owes you. That's what I told Charley to tell you. I told him to tell you I'd pay you every last—" "Well, well," the old gentleman interrupted, testily. "I don't know anything about that." "I'm expecting to pay you," Adams went on, swallowing again painfully. "I was expecting to do it out of a loan I thought I could get on my glue works." The old gentleman lifted his frosted eyebrows. "Oh, out of the glue works? You expected to raise money on the glue works, did you?" At that, Adams's agitation increased prodigiously. "How'd you think I expected to pay you?" he said. "Did you think I expected to get money out on my old bones?" He slapped himself harshly upon the chest and legs. "Do you think a bank'll lend money on a man's ribs and his broken-down old knee-bones? They won't do it. You got to have some business prospects to show 'em if you haven't got any property nor securities. And what business prospects have I got now, with that sign of yours up over yonder? Why, you don't need to make an ounce of glue. Your sign's fixed me without your doing another lick. That's all you had to do. Just put your sign up. You needn't to—" "Just let me tell you something, Virgil Adams," the old man interrupted, harshly. I got just one right important thing to tell you before we talk any further business, and that's this. There's some few men in this town made their money in off-color ways, but there aren't many, and those there are have had to be a darn sight slicker than you know how to be, or ever will know how to be. Yes, sir, and they none of 'em had the gumption to try to make it out of a man that had the spirit not to let 'em, and the strength not to let 'em. I know what you thought. Here, you said to yourself, here's this old fool J. A. Lamb. He's kind of worn out and in his second childhood like. I can put it over on him without his ever—" "I did not!" Adams shouted. "A great deal you know about my feelings and all what I said to myself. There's one thing I wanted to tell you, and that's what I'm saying to myself now and what my feelings are this minute." He struck the table a great blow with his thin fist, and shook the damaged knuckles in the air. "I just want to tell you, whatever I did feel, I don't feel mean any more. Not today, I don't. There's a meaner man in this world today than I am, Mr. Lamb." "Oh, so you feel better about yourself today, do you, Virgil?" "You bet I do. You worked till you got me where you want me, and I wouldn't do that to another man, no matter what he did to me. I wouldn't—" "What are you talking about? How have I got you where I want you?" "Ain't it plain enough?" Adams cried. "You even got me where I can't raise the money to pay back what my boy owes you. Do you suppose anybody's fool enough to let me have a cent on this business, after one look at what you got over there across the road?" "No, I don't." "No, you don't," Adams echoed hoarsely. "What's more, you knew my house was mortgaged, and my—" "I did not," Lamb interrupted angrily. "What do I care about your house?" "What's the use your talking like that?" Adams cried. "You got me where I can't even raise the money to pay what my boy owes the company, so's I can't show any reason to stop the prosecution and keep him out of the penitentiary. That's where you worked till you got me." "What?" Lamb shouted. "You accuse me of—" "Accuse you? What am I telling you? Do you think I got no eyes?" And Adams hammered the table again. "Why, you knew the boy was weak." "I did not." "Listen. You kept him there after you got mad at my leaving the way I did. You kept him there after you suspected him, and you had him watched. You let him go on, just waited to catch him and ruin him." "You're crazy," the old man bellowed. "I didn't know there was anything against the boy till last night. You're crazy, I say." Adams looked it. With his hair disordered over his haggard forehead and bloodshot eyes, with his bruised hands pounding the table and flying in 100 wild and absurd gestures, while his feet shuffled constantly to preserve his balance upon staggering legs, he was the picture of a man with a mind gone to rags. "Maybe I am crazy," he cried, his voice breaking and quavering. "Maybe I am, but I wouldn't stand there and taunt a man with it if I'd done to him what you've done to me. Just look at me. I worked all my life for you, and what I did when I quit never harmed you. It didn't make 2 cents worth of difference in your life, and it looked like it'd mean all the difference in the world to my family. And now look what you've done to me for it. I tell you, Mr. Lamb, there never was a man looked up to another man the way I looked up to you the whole of my life. But I don't look up to you any more. You think you got a fine day of it now, riding up in your automobile to look at that sign, and then over here at my poor little works that you've ruined. But listen to me just this one last time." The cracking voice broke into falsetto, and the gesticulating hands fluttered uncontrollably. "Just you listen," he panted. "You think I did you a bad turn, and now you got me ruined for it, and you got my works ruined, and my family ruined, and if anybody had told me this time last year I'd ever say such a thing to you, I'd call him a dang liar. But I do say it. I say you've acted toward me like a doggone mean man." His voice, exhausted, like his body, was just able to do him this final service. Then he sank, crumpled, into the chair by the table, his chin down hard upon his chest. "I tell you, you're crazy," Lamb said again. "I never in the world—" But he checked himself, staring in sudden perplexity at his accuser. "Look here," he said. "What's the matter with you? Have you got another of those—" He put his hand upon Adam's shoulder, which jerked feebly under the touch. The old man went to the door and called to the foreman. "Here," he said. "Run and tell my chauffeur to bring my car over here. Tell him to drive right up over the sidewalk and across the lot. Tell him to hurry." So it happened, the great J. A. Lamb a second time brought his former clerk home, stricken and almost inanimate. End of Chapter 23.